Continuamos. Nuestro siguiente expositor es Vadimir Kacahalin. Vladimir es PhD en Economía en la Universidad Estatal de Moscú, es miembro del International Competition Network, representante del Servicio Federal Antimonopolio en Rusia. En la actualidad es asesor del gobierno ruso en problemas de competencia internacional en calidad de asistente del jefe federal antimonopolio Servicio de Rusia y coautor de la Ley de Protección de la Competencia en Rusia. El doctor Vadimir Kacahalin nos presenta el tema mediante videoconferencia de multinacionales en la recesión económica, medidas antimonopólicas en el contexto ruso.
Good morning, dear colleagues, and many thanks for providing me with possibility of making this presentation on multinationals in economic downturn, antitrust aspects in the Russian context. I'm going to make this presentation on my own. That is, views expressed those of mine and does not reflect the official position of FIS Russia. So, having made this disclaimer, I can feel myself more. Presentation brings us to our slide number 2, please. Slide number 2. Yes, thank you. Where I'm trying to describe the presentation outline. So I would suggest to consider the antitrust application of economic downturn applicably to the following aspects of competition law and policy. First, let me first to touch upon the corporate behavior in crisis times and focus it on its antitrust implications. Then proceed to the influence of crisis on competition policy, and end up with the influence of crisis on the market structure. So I would suggest to consider those issues in the context of presence of large multinational companies in the national economy and exemplified with the Russian experience. So this is going to bring us to our next slide. That is slide number 3. Slide number 3, please. Thank you. That is addressing the major antitrust aspects of the activities of multinational companies in general and in crisis times in particular. First, this is unilateral conduct, that is behavior pursued by a multi-company on its own, that is alone, not accompanied by other companies. Then we'll pass over to the cartels and coordinated oligopolistic activity. And last but not least aspect is merger review and control over concentration that used to pass through substantial changes in crisis times. So this is taking us further to slide number 4. That is the next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Focusing on the unilateral conduct. So first of all, what's really important in the international context and in the context of multinational activities is that the multinational companies used to pursue the similar corporate strategies in different countries, and sometimes those strategies may contradict to the national antitrust rules. And possibly most widely known internationally internationally widely known example of such replicating activities or replicating violations is the so-called Coca-Cola case, when the Coca-Cola company conditioned the discounts by selling its products to the disco bar for further the by the obligation of the disco bars not to purchase the products of Coca-Cola. So mm, this practice is known internationally as exclusive dealing, and it used to be prosecuted as antitrust violations by most of the jurisdictions, and um, the prosecution of this practice was started in North America, and then further the Western European countries also discovered this practice in their territory and also prosecuted it. And Russia followed the example of its Western colleagues and prosecuted this violation in the territory of Russia by issuing an injunction or kind of cease and desist order to Coca-Cola, prescribing the company to refrain further from such practice. Um, it's worth noting that that Coca-Cola quickly agreed to comply and manifested quite good adherence to the antitrust legislation. So one aspect that is specific for the crisis period is probably the reduction of dynamic competition among the largest companies in the world, mainly due to the lack of funding for innovation. So, as we know, the dynamic competition is competition by means of introduction of new goods and services in the market, or introduction of substantially modified or improved goods and services in the market. And to do that, of course, company need funds. In the crisis times, their financial position naturally deteriorates, and it results to less funding for innovations, and innovations, and therefore dynamic competition. The pricing behavior of multinationals in crisis is not generally not following the path, the let's say mainstream path, that is decreasing the prices for major products, at least in Russia. If we look at the oil sector, for example, the national oil companies do not decrease the prices in the national markets proportionally to the decrease of prices for oil in the international market, trying therefore to compensate their losses in the international market by maintaining still high prices at the national market. And of course, they're abusing their dominance in this situation, and use the very limited elasticity of domestic supply for oil and oil products in Russia due to high distances and cold climates requiring a lot of fuel, both for transportation and fueling. Let me pass with that to slide number 5. That is our next slide, please. Dedicated to cartels and coordinated oligopolistic activities. According to some experts, in crisis times, the companies, the big companies, the market dominant companies operating in oligopolistic markets have greater incentives for capitalization due to reduction of their revenues and worsening of the financial position. The major reason for that is that competition, in fact, requires investment and a lot of funds put in to be put in the promotion of goods and services in the market. In crisis times, then the financial position of companies is deteriorating. It's more easy for them to collude on prices and on market sharing than to spend a lot of money for real competition and innovation. This takes place at the background of the limited ability of the national authorities to prosecute cartels involving multinationals. This limitation is mainly due to the national confidentiality rules and limitation to obtain information on collusive agreements concluded abroad. And it's specifically acute issue for Russia because most of the Russian companies that operate domestically are registered abroad or have their holding companies abroad, and therefore the Russian Antitrust Authority, the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service of Russia, has really serious problems with obtaining the evidence of their collusive practices and collusive agreement concluded outside the national territory of Russia. In this situation, the Russian Antitrust Authority tends to use more economic arguments and circumstantial evidence due to hurdles in obtaining hardcore evidence by traditional detective means. Let me exemplify the situation just by one example example from the air connection service. So let's pass over to slide number 6. That is our next slide. Okay, that's it. So the example is as follows. So we tend to use the comparison between similar markets for revealing collusion between the major dominant companies in oligopolistic markets. So imagine the situation then three companies, actually three big Russian companies such as Airport Russian Airlines, CP and UT Air that have 90% of service between Moscow and the city of Perm, has simultaneously increased the price for the air connection between Moscow and Perm. And similar situation was observed in another air route such as Moscow, for example. So what prompted us, the Antitrust Authority, to use the comparison between similar markets is actually the passengers' complaints that indicated that the price of flight between Moscow and Perm was several times higher than the cost of flight between similar distances, for instance, between Moscow and Krasnodar and Moscow and Ufa. So it was similar distance, about 1,100 kilometers, and the flight costs for passengers was about from 400 to 470 American dollars in ruble denomination. Meanwhile, the cost of flight for similar distance between, for example, Moscow and Krasnodar was about 100 and $150. So the difference was actually 3 to 4 fold. At the same time, the market research showed that the situation could not be justified by a kind of general economic situation in this particular market, such as the service between Moscow and Bhopal, because the per flight cost for companies, such as costs for aviation kerosene, for airport charges, and airport services to the airplanes, were in fact lower than for those costs in the similar flights. And the passengers load was higher than that on flights to other destinations for the same distance and same conditions. So, based on this circumstantial evidence, the FS Russia alleged the three companies in capitalization and issued the cease and desist order, although we didn't have a kind of smoking gun evidence of collusion like a signed agreement or a video record of negotiations between the participants of collusion. So this kind of cases actually prompted us to develop a kind of a system of comparison between similar flights that are flights for similar distances and with similar passengers load and similar cost of airport services. And actually, we were happy to discover that we were not alone in doing that, because the Italian Competition Authority used a very similar methodology for revealing capitalization in the fair connection between the main frame of Italy and Sicily. So we're trying to make a kind of database for database of similar markets in various industries, and this brings us to slide number 7. That is our next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. That describes actually the system of market screening that we are currently developing and proceeding to use to a substantial extent. First of all, we compare the similar markets, and we compare the same market in different periods of time, and we used to do quite elaborate price monitoring, especially in oil and gas sector. So FS initiated the creation of the internet-based platform, so to say, or in other words, databases containing information on prices for the most economically and socially important products. And we are trying to recruit international support to this effort and create this kind of databases for products presenting mutual interest for participating competition authorities. For instance, for oil products, we created such platform together with Austrian Competition Authority and actually 28 more competition authorities in Europe and other parts of the world express their interest to participate in it. Another platform that is the database on similar markets and similar products relates to the process for pharmaceutical. So we are currently developing this platform with the Italian competition authority and 11 more authorities expressed their interest in participating in it, and 12 more authorities currently consider a possibility of joining. Now, the platform was a database that includes information on a number of vital pharmaceuticals, although there are quite few of them for the moment.
Buenas. Les pedimos disculpas. Regresa,
Yeah. Should we go? Okay. So, quick way of working on this kind of data platform for the pharmaceutical. Also, we are developing similar platform or database for the air connection. We're currently doing it domestically, but we are going to include the information available on the cost of similar flights in foreign countries as well. Okay. So this brings us to our next slide, please. That is slide number 8. Next slide, please. Okay. The one on the merger review. The general trend observable both in Russia and internationally is a substantial increase in merger applications in the crisis times. For instance, if we look at the number of merger and acquisition deals in the Russian telecom industry, it would be obvious that the number of merger deals concluded in crisis and just post-crisis years of 2010 and 2011 are substantially more than the number of similar deals cleared in 2012. So the difference between 2010 and 2012 is more than fourfold. In crisis times, there are serious pressures on the antitrust authorities for more lenient clearing including the mergers involving multinationals, primarily due to the failing company considerations. And in this situation, the antitrust authority is rather clear the merger than to let the failing company to go bankrupt, and therefore its assets would leave the market, and it would be less pro-consumer ethic than the and the increase of concentration due to the merger. Even if say for the pre-merger or pre-2 merger, it's better than one of the companies just going out of the market completely. So substantial problem here is multi-jurisdictional review that is that is especially applicable to the multinationals situation. The mergers are to be cleared by several jurisdictions at the same time. So the national competition authorities should agree on remedies, and some remedies applicable to may not be applicable to another one. So it's also a special issue in the international antitrust enforcement that is more acute in crisis times because of the need of speedy decisions under threat of one of the companies going bankrupt. So with that, let me pass to slide number 1. That is our next slide, please. And I would say that I actually borrowed it from the presentation by former head of the UK OFT, John Singleton, and the chief of advocacy, Chris Jenkins, dedicated to competition advocacy in the times of economic downturn. So generally, competition policy works well when markets are stable, and then there is enough time for the markets to evolve and drive efficiently. In the times of crisis, this long-term priority is likely to be overwhelmed by the priority of short-term survival of particular industries and particular companies. And the government policy in this situation is likely to focus more on this short-term priority rather than on the long-term priority of development of competition. Competition works well, then there are low barriers to entry and exit of firms. In crisis times, this principle may be overwhelmed by pressures to support failing firms, that is, supporting the firms that are not efficient and in normal situation would leave the market under the competitive pressure. In normal times, consumers are able to cope with variability in price and quality of goods and services supplied by different competitors. In crisis times, consumers are likely to value stability of supply over improved aggregate outcomes of the market entity. So, and the big question here, whether it implies the reduced support to competition by government and by major stakeholders involved in the development of competition policy. So this brings us to our next slide. That is slide number 10. Next slide, please. Thank you. We're trying to see how the downturn may threaten competition policy. The general economic crisis invokes pressure to sacrifice the vigor of competition for achieving other policy priorities, such as job savings, saving companies and maintaining afloat of the regional economy. It's normally accompanied by the growing protectionism. So actually, everybody tends to protect their own economy rather than letting somebody from abroad to penetrate in the local market and create even greater competition for companies suffering a substantial deterioration of their financial position in crisis times. The control over economic concentration is generally also lessened under the crisis conditions because of the need of urgent cleaning of mergers and growing use of the failing company business. Another aspect is that some domestic companies who cannot survive in crisis times on their own may be acquired by larger multinationals. Competition authorities may use less bigger merger remedies, and they tend to use behavioral remedies rather than structural remedies in crisis times. Because to use a structural remedy, the authority may need to find a proper buyer for the entity separated from the merging entity in order to provide all the market participants with equal access to goods and services. Government tends to support major national banks that is likely to lessen competition by international banks and smaller banks. And government tends to support particular industries having vital significance for social sphere, economy, infrastructure, and national security. So that is quite common, and this policy is generally available under the national competition legislation of many countries that have a system of state aid control, but in crisis times it's especially important to use the state aid control provisions properly so as to not to discriminate the particular companies and provide the state state aid in a fair manner. So this brings us to our next slide, please. Thank you, and actually this is the last one. This one is dedicated to the crisis implications for the market structure. So generally, crisis results into increased market concentration and therefore possibilities of oligopolistic behavior and cartelization. Crisis leads to reduced innovation and therefore decrease in dynamic competition. In its turn, the reduced competition retard the post-crisis recovery. What is specific for Russia in crisis times is that the national economy is crucially dependent on the prices and demand for oil and oil products, because it is the oil industry that pays taxes accruing for more than 50% of the federal budget. So, in this sense, the domestic recovery and domestic competition is dependent on the internationally generated growth that may result in growing demand for oil and oil products. However, not to make this world picture that grim, I would say that on the other hand, the increased concentration of the company's resources due to mergers in crisis times may help to accumulate funds for innovation in some high-tech industry, and this may help to for those companies to come up with new goods and services, and in this turn, it may help to overcome the recession, and moreover, to bring about kind of structural changes in the economy that can form grounds for further economic growth. So thank you so much. This brings us to the end of our presentation. And now, next slide, please.
Agradecemos al doctor Kacahalin por su intervención con el tema Multinacionales en la recesión económica, medidas antimonopólicas en el contexto ruso. A continuación, les invitamos a un refrigerio y retornaremos luego de 15 minutos. Muchas gracias.